Rear Deck sends in this take for Spencer scale of agreement. The Big Ten Conference will make it 4 national championships in a row, with Penn State winning in 2025 and Oregon winning in 2026. I would love for this to happen so very much. I'm in on Penn State this year over on Locked On College Football. I think they are very good because they are. It's a team that was one drive from the national title game a year ago. Most of that team is back. They hired Jim Knowles from Ohio State, who we as Oregon fans know is a great defensive coordinator, and they've got a lot going for them there. Oregon winning in 2026. I mean, is picking national title winners is difficult. It would be something if the Big Ten rattled off 4 in a row. I don't even know the last time the SEC won 4 in a row, because it would have been 19 to 22. Okay, well, that didn't take very long, but that would have been the last time, because LSU won it in 2019, Bama 21, Georgia 21-22. So that'd be the last time. If you went Michigan, Ohio State, Penn, when was the last time they did with 4 different teams? I don't know that has ever happened, at least in the modern era of college football. So that'd be pretty unprecedented. But look, I think Penn State this year is a legitimate national title contender. I put Oregon in that mix, but I have them a notch below for experience reasons. And Jim Knowles is DC, man. He's really, really good. Like, Penn State just got all the tools this year. We'll see if James Franklin can get over the big game hump, but people have the same criticisms of Jim Harbaugh for a while. And if you'll remember, going into last year, a question I used to get frequently going into the year, is Dan Lanning going to win the big game? Can Dan Lanning win the big game? Does Dan Lanning need to win the big game? And based on the first 2 years of Dan Lanning coaching, I thought, well, first of all, there have been some big games. And second of all, I don't doubt that he's going to be able to break through in one of those moments. And yeah, the Rose Bowl was ugly, but October 12th, I think it was one of the biggest days in the history of Oregon football. Quite literally. So, and by the way, that was a Dan Lanning coaching masterclass with the 12 men on the field, and he forced the rule change and all that. Like, I don't think he had that in his bag in year one. One of the reasons that even though Oregon has a young team this year, and, like one ESPN commentator, I forget who it was, ESPN or The Athletic, I talked about it a while ago on the show, picked Oregon to be the unranked team at the end of the season who's ranked in the top 10 this year, meaning they'd probably go 8-4 or 7-5. I understand why you'd come to that conclusion. I think that's underselling Dan Lanning a little bit as a head coach. But anyway, getting back to the question here from Rear Duck. Penn State this year, Oregon next year. It's not the most likely thing. Those are going to be 2 top 5 national title odds teams in the next couple of seasons. Penn State, I think, is, let's see what FanDuel's got them at for national championship. They wouldn't be outside the top 3. They'd probably be number 2 behind Clemson for me, personally. So national championship, Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Penn State, Alabama are the top 5. Oregon is there at number 8. Next year, I fully expect Oregon to be inside the top 5 going into the year. So, a couple of top 5 teams. I can't put this any lower than a 4.5, frankly. I don't think I'll put it at a 5 just because, to say it's just as likely to happen as not happen when you're talking national championships, that's a pretty bold statement there. And picking national title winners and Heisman winners is usually what I describe as a sucker's bet. But yeah, Penn State, great shot to do it this year. They will not have the same chance next season. Oregon, good shot this year. I think Oregon will have a great shot next year, presuming Dante Moore comes back and they can figure out what's going on along next year's offensive line. Because, of course, they have 4 newcomers this year, and they're going to lose some of those guys this year. So, or most of them, I think. Anyway, cross that bridge when we come to it. Off-season conversation. BookDuck23AZ says, how much do you think the eventual departures of certain coordinators, timely question, will affect the retention of blue-chip talent we've recruited over the years? Well, very little is the short answer that I'll give you there. But, last week I talked about both coordinators and the likelihood that they could depart. Will Stein leaving is far more likely than Tosh Lupoi. I think we understand that. I don't think there are places, despite his recruiting prowess, that are lining up to try and hire Tosh away to be the DC somewhere else. And also, when was the last time a coordinator left Oregon for a lateral move? It's not the sort of play, like it's one of the probably 10 best jobs in all of college football. Like which place are you leaving for? There would have to be a falling out. Jim Knowles at Ohio State, going from Ohio State to Penn State, that's a lateral move, maybe even an ever so slight of a downgrade. That happened, I heard, because there was some internal strife between Ryan Day and Jim Knowles. And I don't know that for 100% to be certain, but why else would you leave a team you just won a national championship with? Like, it seems a little strange. To go to a contender like that's odd. But I don't think that's likely to happen. Dan and Tosh have seemed very tight. I've never heard of anything happening between those two. So is there going to be a blow up there? No. Would Will Stein leave Oregon to go be LSU's offensive coordinator? I don't think so. Would he go to be Texas's offensive coordinator? Maybe. But no, he wouldn't go to Texas specifically. Steve Sarkisian's the play caller. He's not going to give that up. So, yeah, I don't think there are any lateral places where you lose a coordinator. But for a head coaching position, yeah, absolutely. Stanford's going to be looking for a full-time head coach. Maybe a job or two in the state of Texas comes up. Watch for Will Stein's name to get thrown around out there. If a Big Ten job, like if the Maryland job comes open, maybe they try and hire Will Stein. He's got experience in the Big Ten. And also they're trying to commit to football financially in a big way. It's on the other side of the country, but hey, Will Stein came from the state of Texas. He's at Oregon now. Maryland's, I think, roughly equidistant there. So back to the question, will it affect Oregon's ability to retain all the talent they have on the roster this year and in the coming years? Not significantly. You could see it for a couple of players. Oregon is not a place that you're going to see a mass exodus from if a coordinator, Will Stein, gets hired to be a head coach. So take, for instance, Curt Cignetti. Went to Indiana last year. He brought with him like 20, 30 guys or whatever it was from James Madison, the place where he'd been before winning football games. And they, of course, had a lot of success. Up at Washington State, our old Pac-12 foe, RIP, you've got the same thing. Jimmy Rogers left South Dakota State, brings a bunch of guys with him up to Pullman this year. Will Stein is not going to pull a bunch of guys away from Oregon. When Kiffin and Sark left Alabama over the years, or what's another good example? When Kirby Smart left, they might have brought a couple of players with them, but when you're making a lateral or a downgrade of a move, which guys, there could be a couple that are more buried on the depth chart, but which guys offensively, Austin Novosad is the name that comes to mind. If Will Stein were to take the Maryland job one day, which guys would go with him? Because that's a better place for them to be, and they want to be with Will Stein. Novosad, sure, because he'd be the starting quarterback. But who else? There might be a couple guys, but no, I don't think Oregon, Lanning is often citing and very proud, and he should be, of the fact that they've never lost a starter to the portal. They've lost some guys over the last couple of seasons. That's to be expected. That's going to happen everywhere you look. But no, I don't think you're ever going to see a play. I just think Oregon has, going back to the Big Ten conversation I was just having with the first question in this segment, Oregon's in the Big Ten, and as a program and as a brand, they've ascended to the point where you're not going to see, players leave in mass unless the head coach leaves as well. That's the only situation where that could occur. So coordinators, no, I do not think so.